The Blue Ridge Parkway was a 469-mile ribbon of pavement stretching from Cherokee, North Carolina to Rockfish Gap, Virginia. Called America's favorite drive, the two-lane highway entertained 16 million visitors a year, making it the most popular attraction under the National Park Service's control. Take that, Grand Canyon, wonder of the natural world indeed. The Parkway was originally conceived as part of the New Deal to help get America out of the Great Depression. States purchased the land that the Parkway would run through, and the federal government financed construction. In order to put as many people to work as possible, excavators and other heavy equipment was only selectively used, leaving most of the work to be done by men wielding shovels and pickaxes. The outbreak of World War II almost ground construction to a halt, as money and resources were stripped from the project, as interest in scenic, mountaintop roadways was replaced by interest in killing Nazis and inventing portable suns. During the war, a little progress was made by a small group of conscientious objectors. Despite all the John Wayne movies to the contrary, they did exist back then. The Parkway wouldn't be finished until 1987, 52 years after construction began. This from a country that created the atomic bomb in less than 4 years. I'd almost made it to the Parkway when another thunderstorm sent me scurrying for cover in a motel on the Cherokee Indian Reservation near the Blue Ridge's southern starting point. Lesson learned from Kentucky, I wasn't too proud to go running for shelter the instant the first drop splattered on my face shield. While it meant losing half a day's ride, it was probably for the best as my clothes still hadn't completely dried from the storm outside a Mammoth Cave, and I'd begun developing an odor disturbingly similar to a high school boy's locker room. I spent my free time in an Indian reservation laundromat watching everything I owned spin around inside an industrial dryer until I'd gotten rid of the funk, or at least some of it. In the morning, cleaner than I'd been in weeks, I tackled the single most pleasant motorcycle road in the entire country. By design, the Parkway gently eased its way through the countryside, snaking its way along the sides of mountains, over rivers, and through tunnels. Other roads were more challenging, the Dragon, with more twists and turns, California Route 36, and with better views, Colorado Route 550. But nothing else was as enjoyable to ride as the Blue Ridge Parkway. Those other routes had their charms, but the Parkway was the first road where I felt like I could relax and let the bike lead the way. I didn't feel like I had to be constantly on alert, worrying about what was around the next bend or getting blasted by a wall of air from some speeding tractor-trailer. Commercial vehicles were actually banned from the road entirely, but the road wasn't dull. There were enough curves, including descending radius curves where the road tightened as it turned, forcing me to readjust my lean while turning to keep the ride interesting. It was, for all intents and purposes, the perfect motorcycle road. I happily rolled up the miles, passing white-tailed deer, wild turkeys, and even a black bear cub playing in the tall grass along the road. I camped at one of the many campgrounds directly on the Parkway, and the next morning chewed up more miles. Around noon, in need of both fuel and food, and with no gas stations on the Parkway, I followed road signs to a small town that consisted of a gas station and a nondescript warehouse, the home of some type of business, though it was impossible to tell what it was from the outside. After filling my tank, I walked toward the store, past a pot-bellied local standing outside the front door puffing away on a cigarette. He sported Larry's haircut from the Three Stooges and blocked most of the entrance with his gut and the rest of it with a cloud of nicotine. I stepped around him in search of a drink and a Snickers in order to hold me over until I could find lunch. Back at the register, I dropped the bottle and candy bar on the counter, but there was no cashier in sight. I looked around to see if he had knelt down between the aisles to stock shelves, but it looked like I was the only one in the store. After a while, 3 college-aged women came in and walked to the back where the wall cooler held drinks, but the clerk was still missing. A construction worker looking for cigarettes stepped in line behind me. The 3 women chose their drinks and came to stand behind the construction worker in our line to nowhere. After trading confused looks with one another, I finally gave up, leaving the bottle and candy bar on the counter and walking outside. Larry puffed away on a fresh cigarette. About to walk past him, I decided I'd better ask where I could find lunch, since there weren't any restaurants in sight. Turning to talk to him, I noticed the little red symbol on his left man boob matched the symbol on the gas station sign. Larry wasn't just some local passing the time at the quick stop, he was Employee of the Month. I had to stop myself from congratulating him on his Herculean work ethic. "Excuse me," I said, "is there any place around here to get lunch?" Larry took a long, hard drag on his cigarette, holding it in as if he were smoking a joint instead of tobacco. Slowly letting the smoke out, he studied the nubbin of a cancer stick in his fingers like it was an algebra problem, all while not letting on that he was aware that I'd spoken. Finally, he said, 4.5 miles that way? He pointed left down the road. Or 4.5 miles that way? He pointed in the other direction. Exhausted from the strenuous effort, he went back to studying his cigarette butt. I could have asked him what kind of restaurants they were, but I worried that he might strain himself if he had to be any more helpful. Thanks, I said, and walked back to my bike. Wait, he called as I pushed my head inside my helmet. We got hot dogs inside. Wondering what it was about me that made gas jockeys want to hard sell me mechanically separated lips and assholes, I turned left out of the driveway. 4.5 miles later, I found a hole-in-the-wall diner. I parked my bike out front. The fact that I could park directly at the front door of the only restaurant in town during the lunch rush should have been a hint to keep looking, but I was hungry, and with a pack slung over my back, I walked inside. There wasn't a single other customer in the place, which looked like a Denver Broncos gift shop had vomited inside back in 1993, and no one had ever bothered to clean it up. Wood paneling and Broncos memorabilia covered the walls. Crooked frames held old, yellowed newspaper clippings. Stuffed animal horses, bleached with age like Beanie Babies left in a station wagon's rear window, dangled above the register. Random pictures of John Elway, smiling, throwing a football, and smiling while throwing a football, peered above every booth. A slab of particle board covered the bottom half of the front door where an unhappy patron had kicked a boot-shaped hole. The booths, vinyl and torn, could have been ripped straight from a retired school bus. All of those things were minor distractions compared to the restaurant's most disturbing feature: the smell of my childhood barber shop. Specifically, the scent of that green disinfecting liquid they soak their combs in. I'd never smelled it anywhere but a barbershop, and certainly never mixed with the stale odor of grilled meat. It brought to mind images of burgers laced with hair clippings and long black hairs hiding in plates of spaghetti. I hadn't made it off the industrial welcome mat and was about to sneak out when a woman's voice in the back called out, "Go ahead, sit anywhere." Damn it, I'd been spotted. Sliding into a booth, I'd barely taken my jacket off when a long-haired kid came up to take my order. I call him/her a kid because I had absolutely no idea if she was a boy or a girl. Not in an intentional trans way, but in a pre-puberty, still sporting baby fat kind of way. The youngster looked to be about 12 years old with straight, shoulder-length dark hair and a round face that gave no hints of cheekbone or jawline. A name tag would have been infinitely helpful, but judging by everything else, it probably would have read Pat. Regardless, by the end of lunch, Shahid ranked somewhere near oatmeal on my list of nemeses. "What can I get you?" Shahid asked with a voice that hadn't hit the proverbial wall that was puberty. "How about a menu?" I asked. Shahid looked at me with a blank stare long enough that I wondered what I'd done wrong, then walked over to the counter, returning with a cloudy plastic single fold. Shahid dropped it on the table, and before I'd so much had a chance to read the restaurant's name, said, "What can I get you?" as if Shahid thought I just wanted to touch the menu before giving my order. "Can I have a glass of water, please?" I asked, trying to buy myself some time. "And what else?" Shahid had a little spiral notebook and pen at the ready. "Can I have a minute to look at the menu?" Shahid took a deep mouth breath and exhaled hard enough that her shoulders dropped as if my request was the dumbest thing Shahid ever heard. After giving the menu a once-over, I realized that Shahid might have had a point. The extent of the diner's culinary repertoire was limited to about 6 things, most of which contained the word patty. There was no chance of eating anything remotely healthy, so I gave in. "Can I please have a cheeseburger?" Shahid nodded, took one step back from the table, turned and hollered, "Mom! Cheeseburger and fries!" in a perfect impression of Will Ferrell's "Mom! Meatloaf!" Wedding Crashers scene. I would have laughed, but I got the feeling it wasn't intentional, since Shahid was 5 when that movie came out. I waited for my burger. I rubbed some of the bigger pieces of road grime from between my knuckles and studied my fingernails. Somewhere, a caterpillar turned into a butterfly. A river eroded its way through millions of years of rock and sediment, unless you were in Utah, and prehistoric swamps became crude oil fields, and I waited. I started wondering if they'd run out of hamburger and thought I should tell him that I wasn't married to the idea of a meat patty. I'd be more than happy to take whatever they had, but Shahid disappeared into the kitchen, leaving me with 100 pairs of John Elway eyes staring at my soul. As long as I was waiting, I figured I could at least find the bathroom and wash some of the bigger bug bits from my knuckles. I started sliding out of the booth when Shahi appeared at my elbow. "How is everything?" Shahi asked. The question threw me off because the only objects on the table were my water, some sugar packets, and the silverware. And it was really hard to screw those things up. "Fine," I said. Everything's good?" Shahi nodded and disappeared back into the kitchen. I went back to waiting, shuffling the pile of sugar packets like a deck of cards and then stacking them into an unsteady tower. A pair of middle-aged women came in, taking the booth directly behind me. I checked my map to pass the time. I'd just about memorized the East Coast's entire highway system when Shahi popped in to check on me again. "How is everything?" I looked at the empty table, at him, and back at the empty table, not sure what Shahi expected to hear. Did Shahi want me to comment on the whiteness of the paper napkin or the wetness of my water? "Everything's fine," I said. "Is there a bathroom I could use?" Shahi released the same mouth-breathing sigh I'd received when I'd asked about the menu. "It's that way." Shahi pointed down a narrow hallway. I used the bathroom and then returned to my booth in the waiting. I checked my map again, read every John Elway article within sight, and listened to the conversation in the booth behind me. With no other customers, it was impossible not to hear what they said. They passed a normal conversation about their kids, school, etc., and with the waiter-iss out of earshot, one of the women said, "Oh, I think it's cute how we have a little waitress." "I think it's a waiter," the second woman said. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I was here last week and I'm pretty sure it's a waiter," the second woman said. I had to stop myself from throwing my 2 cents over the back of the booth. For the record, I was leaning towards waiter, but it was a swing state split. The pair quieted down when the waiteress came back to take their order and to check on the wetness of my water once again. Starting to feel paranoid, I looked around the mostly empty dining room. Was there something wrong with my drink? Did Shahi fill this glass from the toilet? Was Shahi waiting for me to say, "Hey, what's the deal with this water?" so that Shahi could burst out laughing and say, "I wondered how long it'd take you to figure it out." I worried myself with that train of thinking until Shahi asked for a fourth time, and I decided that there was nothing to worry about. Shahi was just an idiot. Finally, the waiteress brought me a plate so covered in oil that it brought to mind volunteers cleaning baby seals after oil tanker spills, and I dug into the worst food of the entire trip. Nothing, not even a steaming pile of Quaker paste on a 100-degree day, came close to being as bad as this lunch. Now, to be fair, the food was only bad if it was intended for human or animal consumption. The gray burger, one of those meat patties that came in frozen stacks with wax paper squares between, was undercooked to the point of raw. What the cook had been doing for the hour and a half between "Mom, cheeseburger," and dropping it onto a plate was a mystery. The only thing I knew for certain was that she sure as hell wasn't cooking. The meat, swallowed entirely by a stale bun, had the consistency of canned cat food, and not the fancy kind either. The menu had claimed that the fries were hand-cut, bringing to mind thick, crisp, golden brown rods of deliciousness. But piled on my plate was a mound of thin, limp, off-white sticks glistening under a layer of grease that couldn't be patted dry with a tropical rainforest worth of paper towels. Even as hungry as I was, I couldn't stomach more than half the patty and a few fries. I pushed my plate away with the balled-up napkin and fork and knife resting at the 5 o'clock position and the international signal for being finished, and waited for the check. And waited. And waited. Strangely, after asking me how everything was 4 times before I ever saw my food, Shahi never checked to see how it was when I actually had it in front of me. Maybe that's because Shahi already knew the answer. While I waited for him to return with the check, I argued with myself. "That's it, I'm doing it." "No, you're not." "Yeah, I am, and you're not talking me out of it." "Quit being an asshole, you're not doing it." "I'm doing it." "Stop it, you're leaving a tip." "Fuck no, I'm not." What would every one of the waitresses you've dated say? "Not everyone. What about, okay, she had issues." "True, but I'm still not leaving a tip." "You're an asshole, not rude. There's a difference. Leave a tip." "Raw cat food burger, weird disinfectant smell, 2+ hour wait. I'm not tipping." Let me ask you a question. What do you do when you find hair in your food? Tip. Lipstick smudge on your glass? Tip. A bunch of Kansas assholes pretend they don't see you so they don't have to serve you. Shit talk Kansas for the rest of my life. And tip. There you go. You tipped all of them. You're leaving a tip here. It's more than just the cat food and barbershop stink. Lunch is the one meal a day I get to enjoy. Breakfast is a brick of machine-pressed oat and whey that tastes like a wax model of a candy bar. Dinner is the Quaker with his soulless crow's eyes and mortar paste. I've already dropped 20 pounds on this trip. And yet none of those things are that weird little prepubescent teen's fault. You're leaving a tip. Look, I let you win the hitchhiking and a kidnapper mobile argument. You're not winning this one. When the waiteress finally came back for my debit card, I had it all planned out. While Shahi was at the register, I'd stuff my atlas back into my pack, cinch down the sleeping bag to the outside, and have one strap over my shoulder by the time Shahi came back with the bill. Shahi'd drop the slip, I'd fill it out with a dark slash through the tip line, and make a quiet exit before the waiteress realized what happened. I pictured myself tearing down Main Street on my bike as Shahi burst out into the road screaming, "The gratuity! You forgot the gratuity!" in her horrible voice. That was probably more complicated than necessary, but this was a first for me and I wasn't taking any chances. Having run my card, the waiteress came back and set the bill on my table. I already had my left arm through its shoulder strap. As if I didn't know how a debit card receipt worked, Shahi thumped a finger on the bottom line and said, "This is where you sign it," pointed to the middle line, "This is where you put the total," and jammed her finger onto the first line, pinning the slip to the table, saying, "And this is where you put my tip." "Okay," I said, and fiddled with the straps on my pack to buy some time until Shahi walked away. Shahi didn't move. I slowly slipped my card back into my wallet. Her eyes went from the slip to me and back. But I was steadfast in my refusal to budge. In the last month, I'd survived close calls with suicidal mule deer and a hailstorm from hell, crossed the Continental Divide on 2 wheels, seen natural wonders that I didn't have the language skills to do justice, ridden roads that had given more experienced bikers nervous breakdowns. I wasn't about to blink in this battle of wills with a 12-year-old. Shahi tilted her head and stared at me through strands of hair. The KGB could have learned something about interrogation from this child. I suddenly became interested in the random bits of paper that had been jammed inside my wallet over the years. Shahi let out one of her sighs. I finally picked up the pen. Starting in reverse order, I signed my name first in the hopes that Shahi'd have to go help the women in the booth behind me. Shahi cocked her hip. Damn it. I scribbled an extra couple of bucks on the total, having officially lost a battle of wills with an androgynous preteen, 1%er I was not. I threw a leg over my bike and headed for Skyline Drive. Having exhausted my patience reserves, I looked forward to spending the rest of the day in the solitude of my helmet and camping alone in some quiet campground. I finished the Blue Ridge Parkway at Rockfish Gap and connected onto Skyline Drive, the asphalt backbone running the length of Shenandoah National Park. Skyline was similar to the Parkway in a lot of ways. Curving roads, abundance of animals. I spotted 7 deers in a single 10-mile stretch, 3 of which did their best to commit suicide by motorcycle, and incredible views. The big differences between the two were that you had to pay a fee in order to ride the Skyline, and Shenandoah enveloped the entire road, giving it a much nicer buffer against development than parts of the Parkway. In the remainder of the day, I covered the majority of Skyline's 105 miles, pitching camp at a mostly empty Matthews Arm, the northernmost campground inside Shenandoah. I chose a spot off to myself where threat of human interaction was low. Once I'd set up my tent and settled down to my nightly bowl of mush, an SUV containing a family of 8, a mother and father, with their 2 daughters and 3 sons, all under the age of 10, pulled into the campsite directly across from me. Half the campground was empty. They could have taken a dozen other sites, but for some reason they chose the one right next to me. I didn't understand it because I'd seen my reflection in the last couple of days, and I wouldn't have camped in the same state as me. My hair was greasy, I hadn't shaved since the start of this trip, and my beard looked like I'd been suffering from radiation sickness. Sleep apnea mixed with asphalt mattresses gave my eyes a sunken corpse look, but none of that mattered as they emptied out of their vehicle one after the other like so many clowns from a toy car. Before they'd even pitched their tents, the screaming began. It wasn't violent or angry screaming, just the high-pitched voices of children cracked out on too much sugar and not enough video games. The 2 girls played a game of 1, 2, 3, go! I had no idea what the game entailed other than yelling 1, 2, 3, go! Over and over without so much as taking a breath between rounds. Two of the boys played I got you, no you didn't, I got you, no I didn't, with rules identical to 1, 2, 3, go. The final boy used a stick to beat on a hunk of wood for 2 hours without pausing. He never even broke rhythm, just thunk, thunk, thunk. After the first hour, the father told him that was enough, and the boy responded with thunk, thunk, thunk. With all of the children playing their games at the same time, the campground sounded something like 1, 2, 3, go, 1, 2, 3, go, I got you, no you didn't, 1, 2, 3, thunk, 1, 2, 3, thunk, no, I got you, no you didn't, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, I got you, thunk, thunk. Laying on my back in the pitch black tent, I found myself actually missing cougar country.